When people think of the ocean, they think fish. But did you know that this is so much more than that? The Philippines' exclusive economic zone covers an estimated 2.2 million square kilometers of water. This makes up 82% of our territories. And yet, it was only this year when the Philippine Rural Reconstruction movement defined the Philippines as a maritime archipelagic nation or MANA. In this three-part special, we explore what the blue economy is about and dive deep into the Philippines' unexplored potential. I'm Atty Karen Jimeno, and this is The Way Forward. In this episode, we sit with movers, shakers, and thought leaders who will give us an overview of how critical the ocean is to our food security. Welcome to The Way Forward. Join us as we discuss and investigate key economic issues impacting the Philippines and Asia. Joining us today is the president of the Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement, Mr. Edicio de la Torre. Ed, you recently spoke in the MANA conference and referred to the Philippines as maritime and archipelagic nation. Can you expound on this?
March is like 1 year after the 500th anniversary of Magellan coming. What does it mean to be the Philippines? We never think of ourselves as first an archipelago. An archipelago, by definition, is a body of water on which there are islands. We are much bigger than the 300,000 square kilometers of land. So the idea of mana natin, dinagdag ko yung natin, is our heritage. And we should value it, we should appreciate it, we should develop it, and if necessary, we must defend it.
So, can you give us an overview of the fisheries sector?
I want to take off from my recent visit to Negros, where the fisher folk, especially the women, were saying, do not think only of rice. I think we capture and produce close to 4.4 million metric tons. I think close to over 800 municipalities have coast. Fish is still the largest source of protein.
Why a lot of the fishermen in the Philippines, the fisher folk, why are they still considered poor or they don't really earn as much in the industry?
There's a parallelism between small farmers and small fishers, but the difference also is that the farmers as a sector is top of the mind. Fishers, they're like on the margin, so there's not much attention paid to them. That's part of the reason why they want a separate department of fisheries that can really pay attention to their specific interests, their needs.
How come we still import some seafood from China?
Yeah, our fishing grounds are partly already overfished, especially inland fisheries. But our richer resources on the ocean part, especially on the West Philippine Sea, that has become a problem. When big international boats come and fish, and they not only fish, they really capture hoard because they have large net, and in particular, galunggong is one of our top fish we consume. And it is our top imports. And they are frozen, they are caught from our seas, mainly Chinese fishing boats. And I was told, they don't really eat galunggong there. They just re-export it to us.
They end up fishing galunggong from our waters and then sell it back. Yeah. Mentioned kanina yung West Philippine Sea. What is the significance of the West Philippine Sea to the Philippines?
It belongs to our exclusive economic zone. The resources in that should belong to or should be exploited, should be developed by us. I know the late ambassador to China, Chito Santa Romana, was a board member of the Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement. And he used to tell us, Ed, I have talked to the Chinese government. At the very least, do not make it a common fishing ground for Filipinos. So he said, will you please check? Because they gave their word. I said, in some areas, they do allow, but in some areas, there's still a problem between their Coast Guard and our fishing boats.
So why do you think is it important that there should be multilateral agreements as opposed to, bilateral with China?
Realistically, in an unequal world where you might have all the rights legally, morally, but you are not as big a player as your, let's say, co-negotiator partner, it's good to harness support from other interested nations, they will do it because it's in their interest that these common grounds should have free and open passage. We have to approach this multilaterally because this is not simply a question between two countries.
Do you think this is something that would be effective against China?
It gives us a much better leverage, negotiating position vis-a-vis China.
So, what is the value of the UNCLOS and the arbitral award to the Philippines and specifically the fishermen?
We have the power of principle, but we still have to continue arguing. And hopefully, the principle of power is not just the alliances among the nations, but also the organization of our communities, the fisher folk, and also hopefully with politicians who respond to them. We are supposed to be the center of marine biodiversity on this part of the world. So we should look at our position here, not only in terms of our interest, but the global interest.
So, what is your message to our fisher folk?
You must start with what we can do with our own effort. Mahalaga tayo. And more important, on the larger picture, mana natin ito. So let us appreciate it, let us develop it, let us protect it.
Thank you so much, Ed. You've really highlighted how important it is, like the resources we have in the Philippines, in our seas, but also the role of the fishing community in this. And I hope that the government can really do something to help them. Thank you again for joining us today and sharing with us your insights, Mr. Edicio de la Torre. This is the way forward. When we return, we look at how we can further strengthen our fisheries sector through government intervention. Joining us is former Congressman Jonathan de la Cruz.
Tingali kung makigdialogo ang atong presidente po sa China aron malikayan ang mga dili maayo nga mga panghitabo sa atong relasyon sa China isip mga amigo sa Pilipinas. Dialogo ang gikinahanglan. Ay mga barko nga naa sa laing nasod nga nakasud dito siguro sa Pilipinas sama ang mga Taiwan, Thailand nga dito ta nag-export hinuon nila ang kita hinuon nga mga taga Pilipinas wala hinuon ta makakuha sa kahimo sa atong isda ni palit na hinuon ta nila dito sa tagagawas nga ato man ang isda. Kung pwede maabot ang tingog dito sa kay Presidente Marcos nga moingon ko niya nga kung pwede lang kung unsay ato muoy ato ang ila dit na manghilabot sa ila dili tud ta magpahilabot sa ato ang ato ug gikuha nila ang ato atong bawion.
This is the way forward. Joining us today is former Abakada Congressman and media practitioner Jonathan de la Cruz. Welcome, Kong Jonat. What do you think are the important issues that need to be addressed soonest when it comes to the fishing sector?
Of course, we have to take care of our fisher folks right now. Most of our coastal communities are populated by what we would call marginalized fisher folks. The most important consideration right now for us to ensure that these coastal communities are properly subsidized and the living conditions are sustainable. We have to upgrade our fishing industry. We don't want to have a situation where the bigger fishing fleets of China, for example, or Vietnam, will aggressively get into our fishing waters. During the Marcos years, meaning the first Marcos administration, there was an effort to put together a group of fisher folks. They were organized, and the government put together what we call a cold chain. We have a lot of fish and everything else, but we don't have the logistics for this to be able to be processed, for example, or brought to market. For example, right now, if you remember, 93% of our salt requirements, is imported. And one of the ingredients for fish drying and everything else to ensure that your fish catch is not going to be thrown away is you have to preserve this. Actually, we can focus on our fishing industry We have a Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, and we also have a Philippine Fisheries Development Authority, which can actually, with these two units combined, can actually focus already. We call it National Convergence Initiative for Sustainable Rural Development.
One very important issue that is impacting the fishing industry is also the issue of importation. Why does it seem like there's a lot of importation, even if globally the Philippines is one of the richest marine center for the world?
We have neglected our fishing fleet. We still have bangkas, and our fishing equipment are not really using modern technology.
What about galunggong? Why are we importing most of it from China?
A lot of it from China. Again, because we have not taken care of our fishing grounds, and it is also possible that they are aggressively getting into our fishing grounds.
Yeah, and then we're buying our own fish basically
from them. But it's very, very possible. The troll fishing and everything, and our fishing grounds are suddenly, most of these are destroyed, the corals are destroyed and everything else.
Kong Jonat, what would be your message to the fishing community and then to policymakers, considering everything that we discussed today?
We have to take care of our oceans and our waters, our areas, through diplomacy and also through upgrading our own capability to enforce our own laws and our own requirements. Let us put our work together, and for our policymakers to be able to provide the necessary platform for our people to appreciate, understand, and assist in making sure that we get the most optimize the use of our waters and our oceans and our inland resources.
That was very insightful. And I think your experience both as a legislator and working in government, really gives you this comprehensive understanding of all the issues and what needs to be done. Again, this is Congressman Jonathan de la Cruz with us, and this is the way forward. When we return, we discuss key solutions and insights of the current administration with Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources Officer in Charge, Director Nestor Dumenden.
PRRM has spent over 7 decades in rural development. We were biased in favor of farmers, and the fisherfolk told us, food is not just rice, it is also fish. The Philippines is more than 300,000 square kilometers of land. Our exclusive economic zone is 2.2 million square kilometers. We are the 15th largest fishing nation in the world. The Philippines is a maritime and archipelagic nation, or MANA. MANA natin ito. We must defend it.
Nababoy ka kita ang mga basura. O kini ba naka-apekto diha sa pag-ubos, pagpunhod sa kuha ninyo sa isda?
Lagi na siya epekto man kay nakadaot man na siya. Ang basura sa laod na daghan baga kayo manglutaw. Labi na gidugikan gibagyo, nga paglurang. Naagidahan basura manglutaw, klase lang, plastik. Minus gidang kuha sa panagat sa laod. Mimikan man po kay dili man pres ang klima god. Pagbugnaw ang silawom, wala gito na.
Nanawalan ko sa gobyerno nga kami mga gagmay managat sana matugunan na ang among mga pangangailangan o nga direkta lang sa amo mga gagmay nga mananagat. Mura po na ako ipangayo sa gobyerno.
This is the way forward. Joining us today is the officer in charge of the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, Director Nestor D. Dumenden. Welcome, Director Nestor. Can you give us an overview of the fishing sector?
The Philippine fisheries industry contributes about 1.27% to the GDP, and this is represented by about 2.3 million registered fisherfolk. And each of these fisherfolk has an average monthly income of 15,000 pesos. And the industry feeds 111 million with an average of 31 kilograms annually of fish. We have to capacitate our fisherfolk to reach the farthest waters of the country so that the aquatic resources of our country could be reached by our own fishermen.
What is the difference between fisheries, fishing, and aquaculture?
Fishing is hunting. Aquaculture is farming.
Director Nestor, how is the Bureau of Fisheries helping the value chain?
Extending assistance to our fisher folk in mobilizing their produce from farm to market. I should be frank with that. The government should invest more in fisheries.
Do you think that a Department of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources or something akin to that is necessary in order to increase one, the funding, but also the attention to issues that are specific to waters or marine life and that sector of the country?
The fisheries sector program in the 1990s recommended that the sector should be given a department level category.
What do you think can be done at the level of our current structure in order to improve the condition of our fisher folk?
We have to intensify educating our fisher folk. There are still lots of our fisher folk that do not believe the fish in our seas are finite. We have to strengthen our supervisory role, meaning law enforcement and monitoring.
Let's shift to a different type of security threat. And perhaps, do you get to see in your line of work the type of intrusion that we experience from foreign fishermen?
Recently, there are reports of some intimidation by foreign, not necessarily fisher folk, but and not also military, especially in the West Philippine Sea. We are closely working with the law enforcement agencies so that our fisher folk will be protected in their fishing activities.
Did you see a difference in terms of our ability to utilize and fish in our territorial waters, particularly in the West Philippine Sea, after we obtained a favorable ruling through the UNCLOS?
Yes, prior to that ruling, our fisher folk were freely fishing in those areas in Scarborough and in Spratly Islands.
So it seems like there was this opposite effect where after we received a favorable arbitral award, that's when the incidents of being intimidated or harassed from non-Filipino fishermen started.
Yes.
What do you think would be a practical solution, considering that this is the effect we've seen when the Philippines tried to remedy the situation or the dispute with the West Philippine Sea using international agreements?
I think that ruling should prevail. We have read in the papers about support of other countries, and that gives us that uplifts our morale, that those areas awarded to the covered by the 200-mile economic zone are ours, and UNCLOS also is consistent with that. So I think we can confidently claim that those are still our fishing grounds.
What would you say is a major issue that needs to be addressed in order to improve the conditions, one, of our fisher folk, but then also to increase the utilization of our marine resources?
First is we have to modernize our fishing industry. Second is that our laws should be based on science.
Director Nestor, lastly, since you're the officer in charge of the Bureau of Fisheries and we are talking about the blue economy, what would be your message to, one, our government and policymakers when it comes to this blue economy? And what is your message to the fisher folk?
To the government, we know that our future lies with our oceans. Our fisher folk, let us not kill the source of our livelihood. If we do not care of our seas, as if we don't care for our children.
Thank you so much, Director Nestor Duminden. And this is the way forward. When we return, we discuss how we can grow the fisheries sector with former Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources Director Asis Perez.
PRRM has spent over 7 decades in rural development. We were biased in favor of farmers, and the fisherfolk told us, food is not just rice, it is also fish. The Philippines is more than 300,000 square kilometers of land. Our exclusive economic zone is 2.2 million square kilometers. We are the 15th largest fishing nation in the world. The Philippines is a maritime and archipelagic nation or MANA. Mana natin ito. We must defend it.
Oo, sang-ayon ako na magkaroon ng departamento yung pangisdaan dahil mas nakikita namin makakapokus yung gobyerno. Mas konti lang yung nakukuha ng Bureau of Fisheries do sa bondo ng Department of Agriculture. Kung magiging departamento ng pangisdaan, mas magkakaroon ng isang tutugon at magtutuon ng pansin upang pangalagaan yung pangisdaan mismo.
This is the way forward. Joining us today is former Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources Director, Attorney Asis Perez. Do you think that we as a country are doing enough to help or address the issues of our fisheries industry?
Our water is 8 times bigger than land, and we're yet to fully develop this potential.
There have been suggestions that the Department of Fisheries would be appropriate.
Yes, that has been the call of the industry ever since, a long time ago. We're supposed to take care of the exclusive economic zone of the country. And we're dealing with international issues as well. The small agency like BFAR is simply not enough to do all those tasks.
There are some data on fishermen being among the poorest in terms of profession.
We're able to improve on that. No longer the fishermen who are the poorest, but it's now the farmers. There was a shift from volume-based production to value-based production.
Can you give me concrete examples of policy reforms or government programs that have supported a shift towards value-based production?
Before, we don't have close season in fishing. And so we fish all the time for 12 months in some areas. But now we've restricted fishing to 9 months. So lower production cost because you go to the sea only 9 months. But lo and behold, you produce more.
But why is importation right now at an all-time high?
When government imports the fish, the aquaculture sector lose money. The importation of galunggong is a fairly recent phenomenon. Remember, in 2013, we were hit by Yolanda. We lost about 60,000 of our fishing boats. Wipe out. 5 months later, Glenda hit us, and it affected the production area in Region 5, Region 4, and Region 3. Did we import? No. The good thing about fisheries is fish has the capacity to compensate for its growth. What is not being considered is the prevailing prices. If you look at the price, for instance, of bangus and tilapia, no change. It's almost always 120 to 130 for tilapia, 160 to 170 prevailing price of bangus over the last 5 years. Your galunggong is 240.
Why is galunggong expensive?
In 2017, there was a decline of about 70,000 metric tons of galunggong. And it coincided with China taking much fish from the West Philippine Sea. There's a time of the year when you find this galunggong congregating in our EEZ, probably around 100 nautical miles up in Palawan. And during those period of time, you will see that this is the time when intruders will come in and get the fish. There's no reason why we cannot believe that part of those catch illegally taken from our waters are the ones that we're buying.
Given that, do you think there's any value in the Philippines obtaining a favorable arbitral award under the UNCLOS in order to, one, restrict the harvesting or intrusion into the Philippines' territorial waters, and then being able to ensure that if we have a closed fishing season, that there's really no fishing going on coming from non-Filipino fishermen.
Well, we won already. So we're hoping that our country, the current administration, will continue to assert and stand its ground.
Since we were already talking about the way forward, what would be, in your opinion, the top two issues that need to be addressed immediately in order to improve the state of our fisheries sector?
Support the creation of a department. What is needed is to develop a policy framework that will ensure that the private sector will be inspired to invest, to put in technology, so that the fisheries part of the blue economy is fully realized.
What would be your message to the President, who also happens to be our acting Agriculture Secretary, when it comes to addressing food security?
When the President, in his SONA, he mentioned not really food security, but food self-sufficiency. That's very different. Now, when the President speaks about food self-sufficiency, it is food security also, but the source is local. What we are against is unnecessary importation that affects local production.
Or the other types of inputs are expensive,
Are
like, for
expensive.
instance, corn that we can't
Yeah.
produce ourselves, or we have
Well,
shortage on.
Yes. For things that, like, when you produce pork or chicken, you need feeds. Same way with fish. We're not against importation of important ingredients. But finished products, we're not very happy.
Thank you, because that's very enlightening, especially when we link our blue economy and our fisheries industry with being self-sufficient, which is one of the stated goals of our government under the new administration. Thank you, Attorney Assis Perez. Is there any final message you have for our fishing communities and our policymakers?
We have vast resources that are waiting to be utilized for the benefit of the nation. We are a maritime country, and we have to embrace that concept that we are a maritime nation.
Again, Attorney Assis Perez, thank you. This is the way forward. When people think of the ocean, they think fish. But did you know that this is so much more than that? The Philippines' exclusive economic zone covers an estimated 2.2 million square kilometers of water. This makes up 82% of our territories. And yet, it was only this year when the Philippine Rural Reconstruction movement defined the Philippines as a maritime archipelagic nation, or MANA. In this three-part special, we explore what the blue economy is about and dive deep into the Philippines' unexplored potential. I'm Atty Karen Jimeno, and this is the way forward.
PRRM has spent over 7 decades in rural development. We were biased in favor of farmers, and the fisherfolk told us, food is not just rice, it is also fish. The Philippines is more than 300,000 square kilometers of land. Our exclusive economic zone is 2.2 million square kilometers. We are the 15th largest fishing nation in the world. The Philippines is a maritime and archipelagic nation, or MANA. Mana natin ito. We must defend it.
In this three-part special, we explore what the blue economy is about and dive deep into the Philippines' unexplored potential. We sit with movers, shakers, and thought leaders who will give us an overview of how the blue economy impacts our national security. I'm Atty Karen Jimeno, and this is the way forward.
PRRM has spent over 7 decades in rural development. We were biased in favor of farmers, and the fisherfolk told us, food is not just rice, it is also fish. The Philippines is more than 300,000 square kilometers of land. Our exclusive economic zone is 2.2 million square kilometers. We are the 15th largest fishing nation in the world. The Philippines is a maritime and archipelagic nation or MANA. Mana natin ito. We must defend it.